And I got to be honest with you, I was watching my news last night, television news, and I was going, I'm still not sure what they're talking about. To join us to try and make some sense of all this is Infrastructure New Zealand's Policy Director on the Public Works Act, Michelle McCormick. And she joins us now. Michelle, thanks very much for joining us. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Michael.
Can you explain to us what the actual effect of the announcements made both yesterday and last week as well actually mean in real terms for ordinary Kiwis?
We'll make it much fairer and a faster process, and actually mean we get delivery of infrastructure on the ground faster. So both announcements were heads up on legislation that we're expecting to be introduced in May this year. So quite right, the detail will be available then. But what we were saying yesterday was the second part, and includes the incentive payment. So when a project is looking to acquire your land, an agency undertaking, say, a roading project, and you've been identified, then as well as having the notice issued to you saying they want to buy your property, there's the incentive payment. So as well as getting the market value for your property, which is undertaken independently, you can now, as part of this proposal, get an additional premium payment equal to additional 15% of the land's value, so up to $150,000. And I'm sure the incentive payment, it will be interesting to see whether it's tied to a timeline too. The sooner you say yes, the larger that payment will be. And the other is also just a recognition payment. So all landowners whose land is acquired under the accelerated provisions, they will receive a 5% recognition payment as well, up to 92,000. So
Okay.
that's fairer. It's actually
So it's
much more
essentially a bribe to
payments.
bugger off. Here, come on.
Yeah,
And yeah, which is fair enough. I
compensation.
mean, a bribe, and the argument, I guess, would be because if you don't bugger off, it's going to cost us X amount to try and get you to bugger off anyhow, and it'll take years because we've got to go through the Environment Court to get you to do
Exactly
it
right.
anyhow, and then you could appeal to the High Court. Can I ask though, they knocked out the Environment Court yesterday as well too, did they, as a sort of a appeal mechanism?
Yes, I did. So rather than, as you say, taking that laborious route through the Environment Court and waiting goodness knows how many years and relitigating whether the project has merit or not, just
Mm.
because of the land acquisition component, that will now be any objections to the purchase will go to either the Minister of Land Information or the relevant local authority. So it will be resolved a lot faster.
The government, though, has seemed, prior to this announcement, to identify local government as an impediment, and particularly the plans, districts, and otherwise that local government has, and restricting access to land on which to build, etc. Do you have the same view?
I think that's probably a case by case. It can happen in places, but I think most local government are very keen to have the new infrastructure developed in their area and to have the benefits of that for their community and and try and support and enable that development.
But the problem, it seems to me, can I just take Queenstown example? I know it's an extreme example, but it's not the only one. In areas where people want to live, Tauranga, Queenstown, Central Otago, Nelson, Napier. The problem is that many of these new housing developments in particular um, um, don't have the infrastructure to go with them. In other words, they're not joined up to the water system. They're not sure that the sewage system can cope, and all those sorts of things. Do you see that as a fundamental problem going forward? That actually there's been such an underinvestment in infrastructure in general that many of these projects will be hampered by that lack.
Yeah, I think the previous announcements on the going for housing growth and the new fees and levies that are being designed are a lot fairer approach. They're not putting that burden of the new infrastructure to support the housing development back on the existing ratepayers. They're ensuring that those developments do actually pay for themselves and the necessary fees are levied to pay for that. Yeah, new infrastructure because they're big costs with the water
They
connections,
are.
roading connections.
Yep. But I would also anticipate, wouldn't you, Michelle, that that's going to increase the property price because the developers now going to have to build the infrastructure, um, regeneration or generation into the property price, yeah? And so that's going to boost property prices, isn't it, in developments?
Well, we're already seeing that in pockets around the country. So Auckland has looked to increase their developer levies, sorry, the developer contributions for the Drury development, and that was actually looking sort of 90, 100,000 extra on a property price.
Mm.
By taking a national consistent view, the minister has signalled that they want to look at those costs and actually apply them more fairly right across the board, though. So it's not being left to individual councils to undertake quite complex calculations on future infrastructure development. The Drury case with Auckland, they were looking 30 years ahead, which is quite difficult for infrastructure needs, and placing that cost immediately on that property at purchase time.
It's just that I can see a sort of, I'm sure you see the schizophrenic nature of this. I know it's not really your purview, Michelle, but on the one hand, they want cheaper house prices in New Zealand, build houses quicker, make them cheaper. On the other hand, you've got an infrastructure investment now you're going to have to make in the property that you build. So it would seem to negate the advantages you might get from speeding up the building process.
I mean, there's certainly planned development areas where those water connections and roading connections are being built ahead of development, and that's the planned development. I guess we've got other situations where a developer, has a beer paddock, and then they want to suddenly, out of the blue, out of timing phase, want to develop that too. And I guess it's not all greenfields development. Starting from scratch, there's encouragement to actually look at connecting and developing the existing communities and building more intensification, which does actually come at a lower cost than the greenfields.
Okay, and as you say, the aim is to actually encourage councils to be a bit more proactive too, because you're taking away that cost that they see as one of the reasons why they don't want things to occur in the development levy system. The devil seems to be in the detail, because although these have been announced in broad terms yet, I assume that there'll be legislation required to introduce them into the House. Does Infrastructure New Zealand have some input into that?
We'll get to comment just like other public submitters at the time once we see the draft bill and it's been sent off to select committee. So yeah, we're definitely looking forward to seeing that detail and how the different changes, the Resource Management Act changes and the Public Works Act all work together.
Do you not have some input already into talking to, I don't know, the particularly land, LINs and those sorts of people, the policy people? Have they not had those discussions with you prior to this?
The Minister appointed an expert advisory panel last year that undertook a lot of interviews right across the board with a lot of the requiring authorities and other organisations that they thought would have a view on the Public Works Act and how it was working at the moment. That group reported back to Minister Pink, and these changes have subsequently come out of that those findings. And we're really pleased to see they have listened. The legislation was very old, very constrained, and probably not resulting in the best outcome actually for landowners or infrastructure developers.
So yeah, so the answer is yes. You probably were. You talked to that advisory group, and did you
Yes.
see the things that you wanted covered in the announcement yesterday? Is there anything that
Um,
you thought that was conspicuously missing that you will make submissions on, if you think, when the legislation gets introduced?
Yeah, the expert advisory panel were constrained by the terms of reference, so it didn't actually look at the disposal of land after the land's been acquired for a project, the project's been built, and then you've got the surplus land. It didn't actually go into that process after that, and we thought there was a lot more that could be done for New Zealand, and how we could actually utilise that land a lot better going forward. So that was something that we might look to comment again on. I'm not sure whether it's in it doesn't look like it's within the scope, but it's always good to put up good thoughts and suggestions and see what the select committee think.